Got the Clio back from the MOT, and it's a pass this time, I'm pleased to say. The MOT man tested the headlights, which he said were okay, so they're only just within the tolerances allowed. So there's obviously something still not right with that, but good enough for an MOT pass. And new windscreen wiper blades, obviously they're fine. And he said that the brakes were a big improvement on what they were. He said that brakes on Clios are never very good. Maybe he means old ones, I don't know, but he said they were good enough. So that's all good. So my next mission is to have a look at the leaking sunroof and the leak around the aerial hole that's causing water to come into the cabin, and see if I can fix this. Stop the immobiliser from being so intermittent in its operation as well. I know there's water leaking in around the aerial, and it's quite loose, and the gasket's got split in it there, so I'll deal with that. First of all, I'm going to take all this tape off the sunroof and get the sunroof mechanism working and greased, and then I'll have somewhere to start from. Look what I found underneath the gaffer tape. It's white silicone sealant, and really quite a lot of it. I think this could take some doing. Well, that's the result of about 3 hours scraping and applications of cellulose thinners to try and wash away the residue, which is done quite successfully, and I haven't done too much damage to the roof. A bit of residue in there, so I'll open it up and get that cleaned out. And it's interesting to note that it's been repaired on a previous occasion with this black sealant, which I need to get out as well. So onwards and upwards. I don't know how long it is since the sunroof was last opened, so I'm just spraying some WD-40 into the gap, and hopefully I won't break anything when I first try and open it. Okay, let's see what happens then. Oops. Oop, that feels very stiff. Let's go back the other way. Ah, it's gone up at the back. Back down again. I'm just going to do that a few times. Well, I've worked the sunroof back into a bit, and now that I've put some grease in the runners, works brilliantly. The sunroof's held in place with a series of 10mm nuts onto some studs underneath this rubber strip. So I'll pull that off in a second, but first of all I'm just going to undo the handle using a T20 Torx. And that should enable me to pull the centre console away. I can pull away the rubber strip, and then I can ease the headlining down to get to those M10 bolts. Well, that's all the bolts removed, so the sunroof will lift up at the back now, and it's only being held in place by the mechanism at the front. Those bolts, those 10mm bolts, are very, very difficult to get out because of access, and to be honest it would be a lot easier to take the headlining out to do this. It's taken me so long to do it. I think it would be worthwhile. And at the back I couldn't get a spanner in or a socket in, so I actually cut the headlining along there, and the same on the driver's side, which doesn't really matter on an old banger like this, but I wouldn't want to do that on a newer car, obviously. So now that I've got the sunroof loose, I'm going to try and lift it out from above. I discovered that there's one T20 self-tapping screw holding the tongue at the front edge, up near the interior light, which I've taken out. So this now should just lift out. Yep, there we go. That's out. And it's all full of water. So I suspect the drainage tubes must be blocked. Yeah, there's an awful lot of water in there. I can't see any drain holes in this this lining tray, so I can only assume that there aren't any. I've given it a good wipe out and got it nice and dry. I think this black silicone on here has been applied as a previous repair. It comes off pretty easily, so I'm going to pull the rest of that off and have a look at the back of the sunroof. It's only taken me a few minutes to get that black silicone sealant off the roof, so I don't think that was ever stuck very well, which might explain why it didn't really stop the leak. So that's all nice and clean. Going to go and have a look at the back of the sunroof itself now. This is looking at the sunroof upside down on the workbench, and the original manufacturer's way of sealing the sunroof was to use this sort of tape stuff, which is quite badly broken down and has been absorbing water. So I guess that's the cause of the leak in the first place, that has subsequently been repaired twice. So I'm going to scrape all of that off and clean it up, and then I'm going to coat this area in a good thick bead of silicone sealant, and hopefully that is going to cure this leak once and for all, or certainly for the life of this 20-year-old car anyway. Now that I've cleaned the roof and I've cleaned the sunroof of any silicone or any sealing tape, I've dropped it back into the car, and it's roughly where it goes. There's a degree of movement where it sits, but that's close enough, and I'm going to use some masking tape to mask off the roof and mask the edges of the sunroof itself, to try and avoid getting silicone sealant on there as much as possible. And I'm going to do the same with the aerial and take that out. This is the back of the aerial base. You can see how wet that is, and you can see that split in it there. And if you see the first video in this series, you can see the amount of water that was coming through that hole and into that overhead centre console. And there's the circuit board out of that centre console. You can see the corrosion on there. That's a bit with the interior lights and switches on it. So I've just been running straight onto that connector. Now that doesn't have any bearing on the immobiliser, but the immobiliser is slightly further back in there, and if I can get that to focus, there you go. You can see the contacts on that have corroded as well, so that can't have been helping. Anyway, back to the sunroof. There's the masking tape on the roof. I've gone to within a millimetre or so of the edge, and I've not followed the radius absolutely accurately. Same around the aerial, as you can see, because I'll give it a wipe with some white spirit once it's all tightened down. But at least that'll stop most of the mess getting all over the paintwork. And I've done the same with the sunroof, which is over there. Oh, that's not the right way. There we go. On the top of there. This is what I'm going to use to seal the roof. It's just a bog standard silicone sealant, own name brand. This is a B&Q one. I think it was about £4, and I'm just going to run a fairly thick bead around the outside of there, stick a bit under the aerial, and stick it all together. So I've just gone around the outside about 4 or 5 times, a couple of thin strips, and then I've gone over the top and just let it kind of wiggle out, make a really thick. Ooh, fumes coming off. This is pretty strong. Wouldn't want to do this inside. So there's a good thick coating of that, and I'm going to stick it straight in the car and bolt it down now. And there's not long to work on this, so I've got to get on with it. I've replaced all of the 10mm bolts underneath, and it's worth noting that they've got a metal insert into plastic, and one of them I felt as I tightened it up start to turn in the insert, so it's important not to over tighten those. But they're all in. I have noticed that there's still a certain amount of spring. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, probably can. In the roof, in the sunroof. If I get in close there, where it meets the roof. So although it's as tight as it'll go, there's still a little bit of a gap which is filled with sealant. So I think the best thing to do is just run a finger around the edge and make sure that that's filled up with sealant before taking the masking tape off. That's the masking tape off, and there's a fairly minimal residue of silicone sealer on the roof. It's a bit around the back there where it's seeped under the edge of the masking tape. That's starting to go off. I noticed when I was taking off the aerial base masking, it was quite stringy, so I think now's a good time to get a cloth with some white spirit on it and just give the whole thing a bit of a wipe and see if I can get rid of what residue there is. That's most of the residue cleaned off then. There's a bit of sort of stringy residue under the edge because it's starting to go off. So once it's gone completely off, I'll run a fine blade around that edge just to pick those little bits off. But other than that, it's fine. And give the roof a bit of a cut with some T-cuts, get rid of that mess. And just the interior trim to go back in. Just before I put the Immobiliser circuit board and the interior lights circuit board back in place, I'm going to give those corroded contacts a bit of a clean with some switch cleaner and a wire brush. And I've also cleaned the contacts up on the car where these two boards plug in. I did get a spark when I first did that because I'd forgotten to disconnect the battery, so that's worth doing. I've now replaced the fuse, and hopefully that'll be alright. I've just eased the circuit board out of its holder, and it's possible to see at the right hand end there just where the corrosion's affected the components. If I can turn that over, try and keep it in focus, the back of those components where they're soldered on are in very, very poor condition. So, well, this is a bit all or nothing really. I'm going to give it a spray with switch cleaner and a gentle clean with the wire brush and hope that when I put it back in the car it still works. That's all back together then, and I've put the smoked plastic cover back on the Immobiliser. It wouldn't work with that on before, so hopefully having cleaned up the contacts on the circuit board and those little components, it'll work. So here it goes. Nothing wrong with that. I'll try it from outside the car. From outside the car then. Yeah, it's working a treat. Wonder if it'll work from any further back. Oh yeah, just about, from about 2 metres away. Well, that's good enough then. Maybe a new battery in the flip might help as well. Not too worried about that though. And that's the sunroof and the aerial hopefully leak free, so with a bit of luck no more problems with that. That's pretty straightforward on the whole. I think if I was to do that again I would take the headlining down to begin with, rather than struggle with it and in the end cut slits in it like I did. You probably wouldn't want to do that if you had a car that was a bit more valuable than this one. And other than that, the 10mm bolts need a bit of care not to over tighten when they go back in. I think that's about it really, pretty straightforward. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please leave a comment, please click like, please subscribe, and maybe that'll spur me on to make another film. Cheers then, bye bye.